Before I pass it off, let's take a quick look at the risk disclosure. Futures, foreign currency, and options trading contain substantial risk and is not for every investor. And as always, past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. So be careful, be smart. Will Busby, founder of Pure Financial Academy, is a software developer and educational director. Since 2009, he has primarily focused on the development and advancements of supply and demand trading principles in the financial markets. Will displays his passion in the PFA community daily and strives to provide a fun and interactive environment for all supply and demand traders. So with that, Will, if you want to unmute and share your screen, we can get started.
All right. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Let me go ahead and get my screen sharing going, and I will absolutely jump to it. Let's see here. All right. Go. Okay, cool. Keith, if you just want to confirm real quick, if you don't mind, you should have my disclaimer up there.
I can see it and I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I'll take it from here. Thank you so much, Keith. I really appreciate it, man. And I certainly appreciate everyone being here. No, it is, as always, like towards the end of the day, we're all just like, oh boy, I'm ready to kick back in the bed and just, I don't know what many of you do, Netflix maybe or something, right? All right. For me, I try to catch up on what happened that day, a little bit of financial news or something like that. Who knows? But let me get to it because we don't have very much time. I'm going to try to get to as much as I can while keeping things, simple and excuse me, and straightforward. We're going to jump to the charts. So I'll spend the majority of the time on the charts as opposed to the PowerPoint. And so I do have a few slides. They're just really introductory slides. So I'll just get through those really quick. And that way we can go ahead and get out to the charts and really see how things work. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of jump over this. I really appreciate, I felt like Keith did a very good job on the disclaimer there. So I'm just going to kind of go over this, but of course, as I'll just parrot basically what he's already said. That trading does indeed contain substantial risks, not for every investor. And we could, of course, lose all of our money, which is very scary. And risk capital is indeed money that can be lost without jeopardizing one's financial security or lifestyle. Only risk capital should be used for trading, and only those with sufficient risk capital should consider trading. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results, and so on and so forth. Okay, so very good. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. See if I can, I'm so sorry, guys and girls. 1 second. Okay, I just wanted to clear my throat without annoying all of you. Okay, so a little bit about PFA, acronym for Pure Financial Academy, of course. I'm sure that probably most of you have either been in an event where, I hosted it before, or maybe you haven't, but if you haven't, certainly a pleasure. And like I said before, I appreciate your time. So I'll tell you a little bit. Pure Financial Academy is an online trading community dedicated to supply and demand order flow methods. We've been providing training materials and software to individuals that are seeking to learn about trading since 2009. So it's been quite a long time, and it's been such a fun road. I will tell you that. We believe in the power of having others that are on the same path to, support or offer support, if you will. But again, having those people that are just, again, community, right? Everyone on the same path. So our mission is to provide a positive and effective environment for traders and investors who wish to utilize supply and demand trading methods and share their experiences with the rest of the team. All right, so those are, I don't think they're clickable. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're not so let me do this real quick. I'll share, I think I have like maybe 3 links to share throughout this whole thing or something. What I'm going to do is just, I'll just post that one in there. So that's our homepage. That's the link that you see up. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Graham. Thank you so much. So that's just our homepage. As a matter of fact, I tell you what, just so I don't have to come back and bore you guys with link posting and all of that good fun stuff. Towards the end of the presentation, I may reference back to the link right there. And what that is just, it's literally just like a sign up page for free newsletter, event invites and things like that. So at the end of the presentation, I'll do a spiel on, hey, we're going to have, our a follow-up event or whatever. So that's the link. And that way that'll actually save me time. And then one other link, get this one out of the way as well, so I can just reference back. Okay, and then there's the final link. That link will give you information on our community, the software, basically what we offer. And then of course I will, the offering, if any of you are interested, that would be the link you can use and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for letting me get through that. So let's go ahead and move forward really quick. As I said, I would try to move forward through this as promptly as possible. Presentation overview. We're going to be focusing on the Zone Suite today. Of course, as a community and a company, we offer our throughout the community course each day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of every week. In case you guys are not familiar with this, that basically we run our live room 3 days a week. Typically, it would go for, well, I would say typically for 1.5 to 2 hours, but today we kind of pushed the envelope and we went over, but it is what it is. So if we have questions or anything like that, we always try to stick around. We don't really ever want to leave anyone with an unanswered question if possible. Yeah, and then of course the forum, just all those things go into the community itself. All right, so let's get right to the introductory tool itself, the PFA Zone Suite. So it's compatible with NinjaTrader 8, of course. It's designed to reduce subjectivity in determining future turning points on a price chart. It utilizes price recognition, volume distribution, and market volatility. Those are just a few in its calculations, which are then displayed on the chart with custom graphics. These graphics can be used for enhanced confluence purposes, which is probably my one of my favorites there for sure, and for keeping track of historical data, which is fully back testable. And we'll talk about that, or if you have any questions, we can certainly go back into that. But let's skip ahead because this is just introductory. Like I said, we're going to get out to it, and we'll see it on the live charts. First thing I want to note before we go to the live charts is what you're going to be looking at, right? So when we get out to the live charts, what am I supposed to be focusing on? And the first of which is going to be the default order management, okay? So if we notate here, we have a supply stop. So speaking of stop, let me stop and just explain a couple of things. I would imagine, especially being here, with Shark Indicators in the crowd, you're all very astute traders, I would imagine. So there's probably not a whole lot that I need to explain, but I'll do that anyway. So here, when we're talking about supply is actually, we had a pretty long, lengthy conversation about that in today's session, but supply is very similar. They are not the same in our opinion, or more importantly, in our methodology, but supply is very similar to resistance, meaning that it's just going to be above wherever price is. So let me do one thing real quick. I always forget to do this, my pointer, and I'm going to make sure that you guys can see it. There we go. So wherever current price is trading, in this particular instance at the bottom of the red body here on this candlestick, that would be current price. If it is above that price value, then it's going to be supply, just kind of similar as to resistance, right? So it could be similar to a resistance line or a resistance level, something to that extent, but suffice to say it is above current price. Whereas the opposing would be considered demand. So if I'm below this current price value down here, for example, you can actually see down there, there's a zone. We'll say at one point that was green, but they lighten over time the more they get tested. So this zone down here, however, we would refer to that as demand. So again, we start at wherever we're trading right now, which I guess right here was 33.50, it looks like. I'm surprised I can still even read that. But anyway, so price is trading here. So anything above would be supply, anything below would be demand. All right. So here we have the supply stop. All right. And that's going to, again, we're focusing right now on the default order management. So let me just go ahead and I'm just going to get all these on the chart at the same time so I can explain them. So each of these gray arrows is pointing to the label over here. Right. So I'm going to kind of emphasize that a little bit. The red label at the top is where the supply stop. Think of this, you know what, let me simplify it. OCO or bracket orders. I'm pretty sure most of us are familiar with that. If we're not, basically what we're going to do is we're going to submit an order to enter into the market. Okay, so that's, let me back this out a little bit so it doesn't look so we have this green label right here. So as you can see, that says supply entry. This is just literally an entry. I mean, everyone knows we're going to have to buy or sell at some point, right? So what the software is doing is just showing that visually, very common, right? I mean, a lot of platforms, and I'd say most all are going to give you some type of label. Ours is obviously more advanced, and it's going to always show you the labels regardless if the entry has been executed or not. So if I were to turn this on, I would thereby be able to see all of these labels. The one above, in this particular case, because we're referencing supply, that means I'm looking to sell the market. So the entry would come in here to sell at whatever this, it looks like 32.39 3/4. The stop would be here, meaning if it goes beyond that, just go ahead and exit me from the trade, because I will admit, I'll concede at that point and just admit defeat, or rather better terminology. And then this here, the gray line, you can, maybe you guys can see it. It depends on your screen size, as well as how it's coming across, but it says TL, that's acronym for trigger line. And the trigger line is where we would substantiate a break even position. Okay, so at what point do we want to protect that investment by moving the stop beyond our entry? And therefore, if it goes against us, we're removed from the trade, and so on and so forth. So this is our trigger line. All of these can be manipulated. They can be moved, accordingly, however you desire it. And then, of course, you can see these bright green. We have 3 of those, so we can implement up to 3 profit targets. That's the maximum, because we don't find that. Typically, we would want more than that, but yeah, so that's what we have there. Okay, so just to summarize this real basic, our default order management is it's putting labels on the chart to show where the entry, stop, up to 3 targets, as well as the trigger line are going to be. Okay. All right, very good. So let's move forward real quick. Just skip that. This is probably the most important part of this slide. And again, just real fast before we get out to the live charts. The orders, okay, remember the terminology that I'm using here is default order management. And this will make sense in just a moment. Here we have orders which are being submitted on the corresponding market. So this can be achieved from either the primary or secondary menus. Again, no worries, we'll see this in just a moment. So default, meaning it's just going to what's on the chart. So if I have the S&P futures market, ES ticker symbol, or the micro or gold, or the euro, whatever the chart is, if I have my settings set to the default, it's going to always submit to that market. Okay. All right. And then the next one we want to look at is our hedge order management data points. This one, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead of that because you all know what the labels are. However, this is a little bit different here. So the orders here are being submitted on the hedge instrument. So if I'm on, let's say, I just pick random markets, right? And I'll talk a little bit about what I do and how I use them and so on. But let's just pick 2 random markets. Let's say that for whatever reason, or actually let's use real markets. Let's say that I'm on gold futures, but yet I want to submit orders to maybe like GLD, ETF, or something like that. Okay. So it can be a little bit different because you're going to have more data in the futures markets, which in my opinion is typically it's a really good thing. The more data I have, I understand and conceptualize what price is actually achieved. So therefore, I may want to use that information to submit my order to the ETF, which you may or may not have access to even overnight data, right? So there's a lot of reasons for it. But I just want you to understand the capability here. So these orders, and as I reference here, I call these the hedge order management data points. These orders are going to be submitted on that other market. Okay. So not the corresponding instrument. So let's use that real example again. Let's say that the chart I have up is gold, the futures. Okay. So that would be GC ticker symbol. And then of course your expiring contract. So we have the gold futures market up, but I want to submit the orders to a different market, right? I don't want to submit them onto the gold futures market. And why would you do that, Will? Well, kind of like I just mentioned, there's a lot of reasons, but probably my primary reason is the data. We have so much data in the futures market, and that there's a reason they call it a leading indicator. It's because again, they trade almost around the clock, et cetera. So again, a lot of data. I can make educated, or I should say, better educated decisions, that's in my opinion, than I can looking at a market without all of the data, right? Okay, so this too can be achieved on either the primary or secondary, I should say menus, I think that should say, but that's okay. We'll look at it in just a moment, all right? And so finally, when we're looking at the labels, it'll be clickable. We're trying to make things very, very user friendly. I just want to notate one thing before we move forward. Everything is funny because Keith and I were having this conversation earlier, actually, in like the one conversation that we actually had time to have. But, we were talking about the order management, we're just things and keeping things simple. Okay. So with the push button, I want to make things so very simple and straightforward. And what Keith and I were talking about is the fact of being usable, right? So what I was explaining to Keith, I said, look, it's simple. I only develop software for me, right? I develop it for me to use. And so everything that you see, it came to fruition because I needed it out of some necessity for myself. And then it just, of course, because of the community and everything, PFA, it goes, to everyone, of course. But I just want to make that abundantly clear. I should say we, the team, we never go out and develop this for sales purposes or anything like that, right? I'm going to do it out of necessity. So that's at the end of the day how these different forms of technology is occurring, like the ability to submit orders from one market to the other without even seeing it, right? Well, that would have never happened had I not needed the ability to do that, I guess is where I'm going with that. Okay. So user-friendly, simple, easy peasy. And we'll look at these simple little things like the clickable plus and negative. I like the ability to alter my contracts directly from the chart. I don't want to have to cancel my order, redo it, re-alter my bracket orders and so on. No, that's too time consuming. I literally need to go to the chart, click a couple of buttons, and go on about my day. All right. So there's the I guess you could call that a user interface or a part of it, if you will. So I can submit the orders, I can reset the orders, I can add, reduce contracts, I can cancel the orders. The button is not visible there because it only becomes visible once the order has actually been submitted, which I'll show you in just a moment. Point is, try to keep it simple. Okay. Yeah, I told you I wasn't going to torture you too bad, right? All right, so I guess I'll go ahead and get through this too, and I'll come back to this perhaps. But if you guys want to go ahead and you can, yep, I posted. So it's the second link that I posted. You can click that if you want, just go directly. That's the link that you're seeing on the screen here. But tomorrow, actually, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to combine everyone, put you guys in the live room with us tomorrow, if that's okay, right? So again, that's tomorrow, August the 12th, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you click that link right there, you'll basically, it's just free, of course. You sign up for the free events and newsletter, such and such. And then sometime probably later tonight, you'll get an email with the details to join, okay? All right, so let's jump out to the live charts. Here we go. Okay. So the things that I was talking about and kind of referencing before, I notated that I wanted you to be aware of the functionality such as the default order management, the secondary and or hedge management, if you will. So if I go up, and we can do this on any market, but of course I already have the, oh, I don't like, there we go. Well, OCD kicking in. But I do already have the S&P up, so it's fine. We'll just go with it. Okay. It's again, any market, all of this is going to be the same. So I guess the only downside about the S&P here is that we have demand, but we don't really have any supply levels. Of course, you probably all know this, but that's because this is literally an all-time high, which is pretty cool because as we're sitting here on August the 11th, we made another all-time historical high on, the S&P 500, which again, I think that's pretty cool. So if you saw a red zone up here, of course, that would be supply, and we can look at that on other markets. Not really relevant for what we're about to talk about, though. So today in the room, we had a fun discussion about this. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of like bid and ask data, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here and I'm going to use what I call my the trade well, the market's closed. I guess I should have thought that one through a little bit. So typically what you're going to find though is right here. And actually it's probably on the videos if you guys check out the software on our website and such. But what you'll see here is this is like a barometer, right? So it's literally going to print the order flow from the exchange, right? Why would you want to do that? It's advantageous for many reasons. I won't get into all of that as far as the bid and ask, but I will say, is there anyone who has ever, now this is where it's kind of one of those things like, oh my goodness, is the universe really playing tricks on me? But have you ever been in a trade, right? And I will use maybe the end of day, because this is super common where it happens. Let's just say that you're in a trade towards the end of the day, maybe like a day trade typically, because let's say your order is close to current price, right? So for all intents and purposes, why don't I just go ahead and start like this, okay? For all intents and purposes, let's say that this order right here, maybe it was sitting like right down here or something at the close. How many times have you noticed that it will go down, fill those orders, your order, right? It will go execute your order and then literally scurry right away from it. How many have you guys noticed that before? In other words, your order is getting executed right before the markets actually close. All right. Have you noticed little things like that before? Or here's a better one. If you do trade supply and demand, or support and resistance for that matter, right? I mean, whatever. If you trade levels, anything horizontal. So let's say that, we're in the middle of the day or whatever the case may be. I tell you what, let me turn the chart trader off here for a second. So let's say that I have my position here, and then I'm going to move my stop up just below this zone, right? So what I'm indicating here is as price, let's use the path tool, okay? So I'm saying maybe we leave it, and then when we come back to this area, the second that I touch that green label there, I want my entry to go ahead and get executed. In other words, I want to buy the market at that price point, okay? Hoping that price would go higher. Well, how many times have you noticed that it will do this? Huh? I know you guys and gals know what I'm talking about. So a lot of things about that, but especially on the smaller time frames. So the smaller the time frames, probably the more frequent, this occurs. And we have terminology for it. Of course, we go into like bull and bear traps, and we talk about all this fun stuff. But at the end of the day, and rather, it is the end of today. A little joke there. Sorry, my humor. It's not very good. But with the bid and ask data, okay. Yeah, you can. Yeah, David. Yep. It's a good question. It's asking, can you use Renko bars? Yes, you can. And I will. Oh, by the way, guys and gals, if I happen to like miss a question or whatever, because I'm probably not going to be paying close attention to the chat, I will, however. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll come back and make sure I don't miss questions. But I did happen to see your question, David. Yeah, you absolutely can use it on Renko bars. Thank you for the question. Okay, so bid and ask data, right? If we have level 2 data, let's say that we have a buy order here. Now, I'm not going to give you guys and gals all this fancy, slides and stuff. I just want to keep this stuff simple, right? And I'll just kind of build the imagery as we go. So let's say that there's a buy order here, and then there's a sell order here. So we have what we would refer to as a bid and an ask. And what that means is between here, you'd have current price. So anything, if it's below current price, they're bidding, meaning they're offering something for that. Anything above it, they're asking. They want to sell it at said price value. All right. So I'm down here. I'm going to bid. I'm going to say, you know what? I'll pay this amount for you. Okay. And if I'm up here, I'm going to say, I'll sell it to you for this much. Right. So we're creating a bit of a spread there. And as you all know, when you get into let's call them not so liquid markets, it's like, oh goodness, in the Forex market too. I mean, you get these big spreads, right? So that's where you start talking about slippage, things like that. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that there's always the bid and the ask, and it's always sitting on the opposing side of price. So every time, you call it the tape or what the ticker, whatever you'd like to call it, but every time an order is executed, you have to have the bid and the ask, which they get matched, right? And thereby you have a transaction. So if I'm the buyer, in other words, I have a bid down here or an offer, and then someone else is the seller, the only way that I can actually get that item, which is price, is for that seller to either come down to me or me go up to it. All right. But one way or the other, someone is giving. Okay. It's just the way that it has to be. Or not someone, but something. So you have your bid and your ask. And why is this important? Look, because at the end of the day, they can see this. All right. So I'm so sorry for that. I wish I could have shown you, but we were looking at it today in the room. It's quite interesting, that barometer in our trade data box, but you can see the orders. And in that level 2 data, it becomes very valuable information, especially to say the market makers and the tiny, the high frequency traders, if you will, the scalpers, and I could go on, et cetera. But those are the ones that you want to watch out for, because they can see things and so fast. They're so fast, especially when you talk about high frequency trading and the market makers and things like that. Well, number one, they're literally sitting, by the exchange. You can't latency, you can't beat them. Okay, so and they definitely have a leg up, hard to beat. So they're aware of your order. And if they wanted to, they could manipulate price to make it seem like there's a bunch of them. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, we could say up here, this is the ask, right? And what they could do, and this is perfectly normal, but they could come in here and put a substantial bid into the market. So if people are, or again, algorithms or whatever, but if they're watching price, it may, you all know, we have a tendency to be emotional, right? I mean, it's just it's human nature. And I encourage that, by the way, because to define someone without emotions is a little different. So we want emotions, we just want to be able to control them. But if we're down here and they're making us believe that there is a substantial amount of demand, or bids, if you will, what it's going to do is it's going to entice this to come down to meet it, right? How many times have you heard of people chasing trades? Oh my goodness, I've done it, right? I can only speak for myself, but I imagine most of us have made that cardinal mistake at least once or twice. And this is just one way. Okay, this is just one manipulation tactic, and it's all based on your bid and ask data. And the only reason that they can do that is, as I said before, because they can see it, right? They know where your order is. So when I was referencing this over here, and I said, how many times have you guys and gals had this happen? Well, I've certainly had it happen, right? So what would happen is it would go, and maybe my stop is one tick or something below the level. It would literally touch it. Okay. I mean, no joke, touch it and then go exactly where I thought it would go. So then the joke, as I was referencing before, you kind of feel like the universe is playing tricks on you. It isn't. It's just they know what they're doing. Okay. So if we have that information at hand, probability is that we would use it too. All right. So what if I could say, actually, what if I could do this? What if I could remove that ability? What if I could just take it away from them, right? And say, you know what? I understand your game. I know what you're capable of, but I'm not going to allow it. Okay. So I'm going to stop you in your tracks, and I'm going to say, I love what you do. It works. Kudos to you, but we're going to go ahead and stop that right now. Okay. When it comes to myself, I can't, that's all we can do, right? We can control ourselves in our own trading. So what I can do is, instead of submitting the normal type of orders, I can utilize the PFA order management. Now, what this does is it functions on a whole different, rather methodology, if you will. So this line that's sitting here, and I'm going to show it to you. Actually, I told you we would do this in the live market. So please remember what we talk about over here. And again, this is not, this is pretty simple information. When you really get into level 2 data, I mean, it's interesting. It really is, but I really don't go there with that, because you can just dive so deep into the weeds. And in my experience, it's unnecessary. But more importantly, it's very stressful. So I try my best to stay out of all of that. I keep it simple, and I don't dive into all of it, but understanding it has given me the ability to come up and innovate with things like this. Okay. So remember what I was saying about the bid and the ask. All right. You got your ask above, your bid below. They're going to try to match those. And that's what you're going to end up with, is the quote unquote last traded price. Okay. Because you have to have both of them to make that transaction. So let me come back to that, because I can then get into the different order types and how that happens, such as the difference between limit and market orders and stop orders and all of that. So there are a lot of ways to make them match the ask and the bid, etc. But if I go over here, I can, well, let me backtrack. You guys don't actually know what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm going to the label. Okay, so it can be any of the three. I have an entry here, a stop, and then there's my target. Now I only have that one target, but we'll talk about the settings if you guys want to look at things like that. That's where I make all those changes, and there's so many possibilities and capabilities that we can go into. But let's keep it simple for now. I'm going to left click this. All right, meaning my entry label. Now I could left click this, as I said, I could click any of them, but I'm just going to left click this. And I'm going to say, you know what, I want to trade whatever I'm trading 4 contracts, let's say, or 5 or 27 or 1, you know, it doesn't really matter. Whatever the number is, that's what I want to make it. And I just did that by left clicking the plus. I can turn it back down to 3 by left clicking the minus button. So again, up or down, pretty simple there. And then what I can do is left click submit orders. If I made a mistake, all right, or let's say I unlinked them, which I could talk about in just a moment, but suffice to say, I want the orders to go back to the way it originally was. I can left click reset orders, and that's exactly what will happen. But I'm going to left click submit orders here. Okay. And what has just happened, you probably noticed something popped up down here in the bottom right corner. So what it says is MES, and that's the market that we're on right here. Okay. So that's going to be the micro S&P futures for those of you who don't know. That's the micro S&P futures. As I said, it's going to say live orders will be submitted on the touch of these trigger lines, right? Minus these. I just added that in there, but on the touch of trigger lines. Okay. Do not reload the chart. If I reload the chart, I'm recalculating everything, and then I just need to resubmit it, right? So I just don't want to do that. There's no point in doing that. What I've done is I've gone out and I've created a value, specifically 44.36 quarter, that I am going to execute my orders at. However, I'm only going to do that if price goes there. So what I'm saying here is I want to execute an order there, but none's the wiser. I don't want anyone to know about it, right? So technically, I am hiding the orders from the exchange. Again, I don't want them to know about it. Why would I want them to know about it, right? Because at that point, I could be part of the manipulation game. And this is common practice. As I said, this has been going on since the beginning of, you know, it's normal behavior. This is what's expected. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if you understand what's going on behind the scenes, kind of makes your job a lot easier, you know, with what you want to do as well. So let's say, for all intents and purposes, we'll run through this example. Okay, so down here again, if that label here is present, that means that this order is active, right? It says it, it's very clear. It's going to be submitted the second that that's touched. So if price comes down as such, okay, so I'm going to just slide price maybe a little bit over. Actually, I'll do it like this. There we go. So if price falls back, let's say it fell back right now and touched 44.36 quarter, it's going to intuitively submit immediately the corresponding 4 contracts. And what I mean by that is a corresponding, meaning on this particular instrument, micro S&P, as the label says right here. Okay, so it's going to submit those. And by intuitively, I mean it will define which side of price it is on. Is it on the bid? Is it on the ask, right? And there are times, let's say you have a very fast moving market or something to that extent. So we need it to be able to determine what to do, because I don't want my orders to get rejected. So I may have to submit a stop order, or I may have to just submit a limit order, right? But it intuitively knows that. So it reads price, which side of price am I on? And let's focus on that, okay? So if price comes down as such, touches the line, instantly the orders are there. And again, none's the wiser until that point happens. So let's say that I get my execution. Boy, that just doesn't, that never, I've been doing this for so long, and that word never sounds any better. Anyway, so let's say that we go down, we get our execution, we go up. All right. Now what's happening is the same thing, because what I don't want to happen, there we go. What I don't want to happen is I don't want them to see where my stop is, right? Because then they can do the same thing. They call sweeping stops. I know many have heard of this. So if they can go down and sweep my stop, here's the likelihood of what might happen. Might go down, might do that because I'm probably not the only one with my stop down there, right? I imagine there's going to be a lot, but this is common practice. So they'll go down, they'll sweep the stops, meaning, go down and just execute or fill them. And then lo and behold, there goes price right where you thought it was going to go. Right. And then most likely even the path was going crazy with me, but yeah. And then it could go completely to the tick. I don't know, but it's going to generally go in the desired, or rather the desired outcome may come true. Okay. So that's very frustrating. I know, again, I've been through this many times. What happens behind the scenes? Nope. Sorry about that. So what happens behind the scenes is we're simply hiding the orders from the exchange because we don't want to give them that ability. Okay. I'm just removing it from them. So if we talk a little bit about the bid and the ask, it's very interesting because the way that bid and ask works, yeah, they're still there. Okay. And I really wish that I could go into my trade data box again, because what you would see, and rather what we talked about today in our live session, actually, if you guys come tomorrow, I'll show you. I'll be happy to. So go ahead and sign up. Make sure you do. Otherwise, you're not going to get the invite. So if you sign up for that and you come into the session tomorrow, just remind me and I will show it to you in the live markets. Okay. All right. So but the bid and ask, ironically, a lot of times it can be backwards. I've had a lot of people come to me and they'll say, oh, the bid, and they expect price to just go higher. But ironically, price starts to kind of drop a little bit. Well, they're like, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense. And I said, no, it does. It makes perfect sense, actually, because remember, the bid is below current price, right? The ask is above it. So if I'm going down, the way that bid and ask is going to function is it will display, which side of the market it went to fill the order on. Okay. And that's every order out there. It doesn't matter who places a person or an algorithm or whatever. But suffice to say, that's what it's going to function on. Okay. So when I'm triggering the bid, meaning price is going down, boop, 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 and it keeps filling at the bid, your bid is going to go up, whereas price is going down. Okay. So it's a little tricky there. You would think maybe the opposite. Now, that doesn't mean if you're getting a ton, let's say you're getting like a ton of bids, right? Yes, price should go up, but it's going to do something more like this, right? So it's probably going to go down, bid, boom. Okay. And then it's going to take off like that. So you're going down to execute those bids so that it can, it's more of collective information. All right. So this is not one bid. It's rather a collection of bids. So whoever holds the most obviously wins, the battle, so to speak. So if up here, if I have the ask side of price, let's say with basically what I'm doing is doing different sizes. Okay, so let's say I have half the amount of ask as I do the bid. Well, price is going to function to equalize the quantity of buyers and sellers and or bid and ask, right? So again, it's going to do something like this. It's going to go, all right. It's going to go like this. It's going to go bid, ask, bid, ask, bid, ask, bid. Ask. Okay. And something like that. And you just keep going down and up and further down until one of them runs out. And then off to the races you go. So this is the reason, one of the reasons, there's a lot, but this is one of the reasons where I have a strong preference in the larger time frames. Now, this was I call it a forced evolution. It's because I never intended to do it. It just happened. I was so busy. I could barely trade. I mean, I had very little time. Business does occupy a lot of time. But what I realized is, I just didn't have the time to trade anymore, the smaller time frame, stuff like that. So I eventually I was like, I'm just going to kind of evolve and try to trade. I mean, I need to be trading for sure. So I'm going to have to do what I can. So I started trading larger time frames. Well, wow, that was great. So then I started trading even larger time frames. And what I realized is it got better and better and better. All right. So I, may be biased towards it, but I have a strong preference towards a larger time frame. This is very applicable to short-term traders, very applicable. Especially as I said, one of the previous examples I gave was towards the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, I'm sure you've seen it. And if you haven't, just pay attention right at the end of this, not every day, but a lot of times they'll have just erratic behavior. Price, it kind of moves up and down really fast. And what it's doing is it's executing all those orders because everyone's coming in at the last. Oh no, it's 4 o'clock, it's 3:59, or oh no, I can't exit my position. So they'll come in with their order and try to exit before the end of the day. Well, why would they do that? Well, they could be using proprietary funding, right? I mean, there's 1,000 different reasons. Probably the biggest reason is maybe they don't have enough money in their account to withstand the margin. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, but you'll find that towards the end of the day. So what we're doing is, as I said, we're just taking that ability away from them. Okay, now that we've covered that a little bit, I want to talk to you real quick about some of the functionality just of the PFA zones. So there is no way for me to even remotely go into, as you all can imagine. I've only talked to you really about one thing, but I wanted to more educate and kind of teach, or rather talk. Probably a lot of you could teach me, but so I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how the orders work in the back end, or on the exchanges, if you will, and how and or why we would decide to hide those from the exchange. Okay, so that's one thing, but let's look at a little bit of the functionality. So down here, all right, we have that label. Well, right now I'm doing some other things. I probably don't want to leave that order unless I've predetermined that I do. But right now, as I told you before, you'd see the cancel orders after it was submitted. So I just click that and voila, now I can resubmit or reset. Okay, so I just left click to reset. I can move all these. Some great functionality, but if you notice, it's keeping calculation here. And what I mean is, let's give some easy numbers. All right, so you see right here where it says RR, that's 40, which means that I have 40 ticks or pips, depending on what you're on, if you're on spot market, Forex, and so on. But right here, I have 40 ticks at risk, and the TL trigger line, the acronym for trigger line, RR says a positive 48. So that means I have 40 ticks at risk. My trigger line is at 48, and I have risk to reward. So this is going to be my reward. My target is at 120, which is equivalent of it's 3 to 1. So if 40 is my risk, times 3 is 120 to the positive side. That's going to be my potential reward. Okay. So watch what happens here. If I take this down, remember I said a 3 to 1. If I take this down to 30, okay, notice how that's now at 90. So again, 3 times 30 is 90. So it's keeping track of all of that. Earlier, I mentioned that we could unlink that, and I said that I might reference back to that. So watch what happens when I make an alteration here. So what I've now done, you see how the lines here, they go from solid to dashed. So now watch what happens. Nothing. Okay, so I've now made them static or fixed rather. So they're not going to keep those calculations. Well, man, and snap my fingers because I really want them to. So all I have to do is reset. Okay, and the calculations are back. All right, so that's a little bit. So let's go into, I'm going to open up the settings here. Actually, before I do that, you see these are menu items. So all these belong to the PFA Zone Suite. I could hide them if I desired that, but I don't, just because I use them. I won't go through all this stuff today. I'm going to stay focused on the orders. So right here, notice where that says entry menu MES 0921. And that's letting me know, right? Because I definitely need to be aware of which market I'm submitting orders to. And probably you would think, well, that's obvious, and it is, right? But remember, the difference is we have certain capabilities here that we've innovated that tell us that we have different capabilities to go to other markets. So I at all times, I need to be aware of that, and I'm aware of it in multiple locations. Number one, from the menu itself, and probably the most obvious is just right there on the label. Okay. And then also, if I submit it, it's going to be dictated in the notification as well. Okay. All right. So again, that's just dictating which market my orders are going to be submitted to. So I'll cancel that out. All right. And if I hover my mouse over this menu. So notice number one, and in all these, we have multiple types of buy, sell, RBRs. These are continuation patterns, just to give you guys a little, but we'll talk about those maybe a little bit more tomorrow. In this one, if I hover my mouse over though, it's totally different. It says entry menu, SPY. I just have some, dummy markets in there, but this can be whatever. It's just in the settings. So I've put into the settings that my hedge instrument is SPY. So for all intensive purposes, if I want to come here to the micro S&P futures, but submit orders kind of like we used earlier, the gold and the GLD, like gold ETF fund or something, I can do the same thing with, micro S&P futures and then the S&P ETF. It's, kind of the same concept there. But whatever, I could put this to gold. I could put it to the euro for whatever reason. If I want, when the S&P does this, if I want to inverse correlate it to another market, I can go right here. And what I'm going to do is just open up my settings. I'm going to go to order inputs and just make that change. I can make it anything that I want it to be. Okay. So all these are just the default, NinjaTrader lists, and they're all going to be there. So if they're up here, they're going to be here as well. Okay. And then I won't go into all these settings. I will go into more of them tomorrow, but there's a lot of different options here. So we have the hedge instrument default right here. As I said, it's currently set to SPY. So let's say if I toggle these off and then I go here and I toggle this on. Okay. So I may choose, and by the way, just bells and whistles, guys and gals, bells and whistles. Notice how the numbers are incrementing different. Previously, it was by 1. Right? But here, notice it goes from 250 to 300. I can actually set that incremental value in the settings so I can make it do whatever I want, both for the primary, which is this one, and the secondary, which is this one. So what I've chosen and or opted for, I say, okay, I'm just going to do opposite ones so that it can, so that you can kind of see the difference there. Actually, let me get that off the screen. There we go. All right. So I'm going to pull this one up. And notice that. So I've opted for 1 incremental value on my primary menu. Okay. So number 3 is going to go to 4, down to 3, up to 4, 5, so on and so forth. And then I'm just going to remove that to make it easier. And this one I'm opting for 50. So 300 goes to 350, down to 300, 250, 300, 350, 400, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I can set that value, just again, little bells and whistles to try to make our lives a lot easier. But what's going to happen is if I go here, I want you to see the difference. If I left click submit orders, notice the difference down here. Okay, so SPY, it says the live orders will be submitted on the touch of the trigger line. But notice something here. There's no stop, no targets, no trigger line. Okay, none of that. So I've done this intentionally. If I wanted to, I could, of course, open the settings and re-enable every one of these by the click of one button. There's an option in our settings to enable or disable the bracket order. In hedging, a lot of times you may not want to put a stop in there, right? Because if it's protecting a position, and then your protection gets taken out, well, you're kind of left with what we would refer to as naked orders, right? Something like that. It's kind of like having your standard position stop removed and you just had an open naked order. You could get into a lot of trouble very quick. So a lot of times, especially like I said, with hedging, we may decide not to execute a bracket order and we only want to execute the entry. And that could go either way. So can definitely have the ability to do all of that. And a lot of those, see, that's going to be in the settings here. If I just open those settings back up, what we'll see here is right in through here, I can opt for, oh goodness, Will, I love that. I love it. But, it's not something that I need this week. I find that I'm only going to be focusing on my, long-term stuff or what have you this week. Okay, got that. So I can alter that and I can set that to default. Okay. So now when I go up here and then, again, apologies, because the markets are closed, right? So it's not going to let me. So if I were to click submit, and again, remind me tomorrow in the live room, and we'll actually do this. What's going to happen is that order is going to instantly be submitted directly to the exchange. So there's no waiting, there's no hiding, okay, none of that. But I definitely want the ability to do that. And that's one of the options that we have there. So bells and whistles, we try to, offer as many as possible. But the most important part here is the functionality. Now, I will tell you another convenience factor in concluding, and then just kind of answer some questions and so on. What I just did, okay, was made a change. I don't like it. Whatever reason, I'm unhappy with it. Now, the way that we do things, and I know that, the guys at Shark Indicators, they have some pretty advanced software, wouldn't you say? I know a lot of people love using both Bloodhound and Blackbird in combination with the PFA Zone suite, because they are fully compatible, of course, right? So, a lot of people do that. They build complete trading plans. And as you can see here, there's so much automation in the PFA Zone suite. They probably have a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that you can build on there. But the functionality, as I said, so the functionality is the most important. And convenience for me is of the utmost importance, just because I have so many, as many of you, so many different things we're doing during the day. The last thing I want to do is overthink anything to do with trading, because it's simple. And at the end of the day, I can complicate it more if I want to, but I'd rather keep it simple. So something silly like I just did, I made a change. The way that we handle our templates, and the reason I was referencing Shark Indicators, our softwares are so complex that the NinjaTrader architecture is not, it's I'm gonna say capable. It's pretty much capable of anything. It's very amazing. But our softwares are so complex with so many settings and variations and possibilities. We actually have to go out and build our own user interface and method of storing all of that, right? All the settings and your user interface and this and that. So it's a lot. What's happening right here behind the scenes is what we call our on-the-fly changes, right? So when I go here and I make an alteration, let's say that I go here and I turn off the zones. Well, technically I just made a change. Okay. When I did this a moment ago, I opened up the user interface and I made a change, right? You all saw that. I made that change to the default orders. Well, when I did that, it was, give me just 1 second, guys. Sorry about that, guy. Yeah. So when I did that, it was an alteration, right? Let's say that I don't like that. In this case, I don't. I'm not very happy with that. And I want to put things back to the way that it was. So for convenience factor, I have what's called a reset template. I'm just going to literally go down, left click this, and then everything's back to the way up. Look in the supply. So everything goes back to the way that it was, right? Which is again, convenience. All right, let me see. I will try, let me get, if maybe I can get back up the slide here. And then I'm just going to answer some questions that you guys and gals have. So hang in there for just 1 second, please. It's a little bit cumbersome, so bear with me. I'm going to do this number, and then we're going to have to swap it. There we go. So the way that PowerPoint there works, a little tricky. Just hang in there for me. Okay. All right, very good. So I'm going to go now ahead. There we go. We'll just keep it on that, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward a couple of slides as I'm answering questions, because I did already discuss this. The link it was the second link that I posted. There was the homepage link followed by, it's called Free Online Trading Education. That second link that you have there. And then the third is relevant to what we're about to discuss here. So of course, I'm going to come in here and try my best to make you a great offer. Try to help to the best of my ability. If you have any questions, all that good fun stuff, we can do that tomorrow as well with a follow-up event, no problem. And of course, we're always happy to help just even outside of that. But let's go ahead and get through the offerings. So the first thing we have to offer, we're going to, the PFA Zone suite, typically the hedger, all that on top of it would come out in 1996, but we're going to include it all just for the 1497. So that will include lifetime 2 licenses actually. The hedger being included, software updates for a year. That's your standard thing. I just want to be out front about that, because we get questions, about updates and all that. So what happens is when you make the purchase, you get a lifetime license, which means there's no expiration on that. Okay. And you get an entire year of absolutely free upgrades and all that updates to the PFA Zone suite and so on and so forth. All right. So that's included. And then after the fact, there's a tiny, there's just a small fee, which I think is, it comes out to 20%. That's all it is. Right. So that, let's say you want to make the purchase and then you don't want to spend anything else. That's fine. You don't ever have to really. Or you could, the only reason that you would ever have to is if NinjaTrader makes a change and maybe they become, it's no longer compatible or something, and we're always going to remain with that. So that's never happened to us, by the way. But anyway, that being said, you have an entire year. You could go 5 years and give us a shout and be like, hey, I want, the latest and greatest, and you would only pay the tiny little fee. So I just want to throw that out there. All right. And then we always want to make sure that we're offering the community, because to us, the community is very powerful. We take the software, the methodology, everything, all of it is encompassed in the community. You get the course, everything that we mentioned towards the beginning of the session, which was the course, the forum. You can just read through the things here. Session recordings. Every day we record the sessions. Like today, for example, we had a great session, and I have members who will come on audio. So I allow that. I think it's great because we get to have conversation. Everyone gets to benefit from it. But anyway, we had that. And then towards the end of the session, I said, look, I really want you guys to go back and review this and so on. So it can expedite your learning curve, I think is a great way to say that. All right. So you can get a year of the PFA community with the inclusions there. Today, you can get it for $17.99.10, which is basically 20% off. And then you can also get access to our lifetime community, which comes out to $44.99. And that's just that's the same one time. There's no maintenance fees. There's no anything. It's just one and done. Okay. All right. And then finally, you can opt for a year of the PFA community with the addition of the Bloodhound Ultimate License Package. You can get that for $22.35.20. And or you could get the lifetime PFA community with Bloodhound Ultimate License Package for $46.35.20. All right, great. Now that I've gotten through that, let me jump back out to the questions and see. I have this is a good question. So what? Again, I told you when I started this, I said, you know what? I know there's going to be there's very astute traders here, right? That's very good. So one of you were asking the question about what options in PFA are exposed to Bloodhound and Blackbird, right? The question, I'm going to just explain that a little bit, and I'm not going to take too much more of your time, because we're pretty much done, but this is important. So what they're asking is all the information that you saw from the PFA zone suite. Okay, so it's as simple as you see the supply and demand zones on the chart. Well, those zones have values. Like, for example, the top of the demand zone and the bottom of the demand zone, the top and bottom of supply zones, the trend line being true or false. You have the order labels, right? You have, every piece of automation in there, there's a value associated with that. And then we store that information, which is pretty cool. How, I don't know how much you guys and gals know about databases, and it gets really complex, but it's interesting. So we have all this information. We have to, because we have to make calculations based on it to derive the supply demand zones and the order labels, everything else. And then that's what you get on that. So we were talking about the graphical representation on the chart. And that's how that is all derived, right? Of course, like any software, you store information, you use it to make calculations on, and so on and so forth. Just so you know, we expose, there's a list, there's an actual list. So in the documentation, there is a list of all of the data points that are exposed, but I will tell you it's almost all of them. The only reason, shucks, I'm trying to think of one that's not. For the most part, it's everything that you would see on the chart. If there's a data value associated, which, almost everything, right? So we don't hide them ever. So we try to expose everything to it. But again, there is a definitive list, and that's in the documentation. Yeah. So for me to go ahead and start going through that list would take forever, because there's a lot of them. Very good. Let's see. Do you think the market really cares about my 2 contracts? Well, I don't think that would be a question for me. I will give you my opinion on it. but do you care about your 2 contracts, right? You tell me, because if you go out there and you put your order, let me tell you something, okay? There's no way for you to do this without, because I never make a recommendation of any kind, right? Prohibited from that. So I will tell you how it would actually work, and you can make your own educated decision. If you were to go out, and I gave you an example of putting that stop right below the demand zone, excuse me, and price was trading near that area towards the end of day, I've seen it too many times. So I will tell you my opinion. Does it matter? Well, absolutely it matters. Absolutely. Your 2 contracts are 2 contracts that may be needed by, Joe or Sally or whomever. So I wouldn't look at it as in your 2 contracts are minuscule, they're still 2 contracts. So yes, I think they're very important. But again, I've seen it happen too many times. So yeah, it'll be very close, and it just jumps right down there to execute those orders, and then off to the races it goes. And remember, a lot of algorithms and people, even they do that intentionally. There's a reason that we know about bull and bear traps, right? So a lot of people have specific strategies just based on bull and bear traps. It's pretty interesting, but yes, I think they matter a lot. That's a great question too, by the way. Thank you. So your zone suite is reading exchange order flow data and calculating levels. Yeah, it's pulling the data from the exchange. Correct. So it feeds through the NinjaTrader platform, from whomever the broker is or whatnot. And the zone suite interprets the data and fulfills its calculations based on it. Yeah. Great question. Thank you, Dave. John, yeah, that's probably more so a question for Keith, but yes, I believe I'm quite certain. I believe he confirmed that for me earlier about the recording. So I believe there will be. I do apologize sincerely, David, on the Renko bar. I didn't have time to do that. Again, if you come into the session tomorrow, I'll be happy to do that for you. I'll put it up on a Renko chart. No problem. Is this, I'm sorry, let me see, I'm not quite understanding the question. I see your software includes your supply demand stuff. Is this something that's going to be demoed tomorrow? I'm not sure that I completely understand the question. The software does not include the general supply and demand, like the methodology, right? So just want to make that understood. You can purchase the software. So if I go back here, you can purchase the software in itself. Okay. But yeah, that does not include the entire community and all of the course material, because what that's designed to do is teach you how to become self-sufficient. In fact, it actually teaches you without any software. It teaches you how to do, all the general trading and principles and so on and so forth without software. So just to, I want to make that clear. Yeah. Let's see. Good. Nice, David. I'm glad to hear that, man. You signed up for more. Yeah. Like I said, I'll definitely be happy to, especially in the room tomorrow, I can, I'll spend as much time as needed. We try, like I said before, we try to do that. So happy to do that. Yeah. So I will maybe tomorrow. Yeah, I can definitely do some things tomorrow. So whatever you guys need, I'll be happy to accommodate. We've already been here a little over an hour. I don't want to keep Keith and the guys, and you know how it goes, guys. But I think I'm going to conclude. Go ahead and do that so I don't take too much more of your time. Hope that you enjoyed the presentation, but again, anything that you have any questions about, just let us know. Or if you want to ask them in tomorrow's session, or email, whatever works for you, and we'll be happy to accommodate it. But I do want to conclude with that one question. I believe all orders are important, and I do believe in the power of hiding it from the exchange, not intentionally just to hide it. I don't care about that. It's more importantly to just protect my own orders, right? Okay, God bless. Thank you so much, guys and gals.